Hello and welcome to the To Be Limitless Friday session. It started out as a Thursday session during the pandemic, but has changed as the UAE calendar has changed to a Monday to Friday. So the last day of everyone's work week here. We're delighted to welcome you from wherever you are in the world. Know that Jamie is joining us from Australia. This is a great opportunity for me to focus on connection. And Jamie and I actually have only met once face-to-face. And then after that session, that session had an effect on Jamie, and I'll get him to talk to you about that. And we developed a connection where he reached out and spoke to me about the profound effect that coaching interaction had on him and the way that he was thinking about his life and his world. And so it was great that when he reached out and said, Mick, I want to talk a little bit further about that. And then he talked about some of the ideas that he had. And I wanted to create a platform, as we always do, for people to share ideas and ways of living and ways of working that are really important. I love the idea and one of the things that we've been really connected with over the last little while is this idea from Charles Blondin, the French trapeze artist who walked across Niagara Falls in the mid-1800s. And his idea was he walked across forwards, he walked across backwards. He took a chair out onto the tightrope that he was walking across, and he balanced on it. And then got to the space where he pulled out a wheelbarrow, and he said to people, who believes I can push the wheelbarrow across the trapeze? And everyone went, yes, we do. And he said, but do you really believe? And they said, yes, we really believe. And then he asked them a third time, but do you really, really believe? And they said, yeah, we do. And he said, great, then hop in. He pointed to one of the participants and asked them to hop in the wheelbarrow. And he spoke about the difference between what belief and what faith is the idea of we can all believe things passively, but to have true faith, you've got to get in the wheelbarrow. You've got to focus on it not just being a head idea, but a head, heart, and hands idea. And so when we get into today's session, I want you to be able to listen to Jamie, but I also want you to be able to take away some of these things to put into action as well, because it's not just about hearing ideas or believing in ideas. It's about, these sessions are also designed to go and create real action in life. I know that's something with David in the room that David really is strong around, is what are the behaviors and the actions you're going to follow up because of the learning you've taken out of today. So without any further shape to today, I want to introduce Jamie. And I want to first of all start by, Jamie, we're going to pin you in a moment as the central figure. Olivia will pin you so that you're the main face on the screen. I'd like you to tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about that connection that we created, and then start to take us through those three really key, interesting sentences, because I know they've captured the imagination of a lot of people that have joined today.
Yeah, cool, Mick. Thank you. And look, thanks so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. As Mick said, yeah, we caught up. Mick ran a session with us. I work for ResMed, a medical device company. We design, manufacture, and sell devices for treating people predominantly for sleep apnea. So this is when you stop breathing at night. Doesn't kill you when you stop breathing at night, because you wake up naturally, but it affects about 1 in 8 people. So Mick came and ran a session with us. We're fortunately to be in the Blue Mountains here in Sydney. And yeah, that connection was really strong right from the moment when I walked in, and I wasn't sure if Mick was the AV guy, as he was kind of on his hands and knees trying to plug the computer in, or whether he was someone else, and kind of quickly realized that actually he wasn't the AV guy. He was here to run the session, and just ran a really impactful session with us in the Blue Mountains. And like I said, we've kept that conversation going over email and LinkedIn and kind of phone call here and there as well. So yeah, that was the start of that connection, and yeah, brought us here today. And yeah, I've got some slides. I never present without slides. So I kind of a bit of a frustrated designer in that regard. I'm going to try and kind of weave my way through some of those 3 points that I sent through to Olivia, and then that Olivia put through onto LinkedIn and other platforms as well. So if now's a good time, I'll dive straight in. Does that sound good, Mick? Yeah, perfect. All right, let me just share my screen. 2 seconds. Oh, okay, so, and of course, and Mick, just jump in if there are questions, or if others want to jump off mute and ask me questions. Please don't feel you have to wait till the end. Yeah, this is me, Jamie, and like I said, this is a little bit different to what I usually do. I live in this world where I work in the research and technology space here at ResMed, and that's been my life is in product development. And so usually I'm talking about innovation and creativity, and kind of I go pretty deep into those areas, and I love the sort of challenge of understanding what innovation is all about, what that means for people, how we can connect innovation to the way in which people are working. But I thought for this session, that's probably not going to hit the mark. I'm probably not speaking to people who are just predominantly in that kind of niche area. And as I was trying to piece this together, I was thinking, well, there's kind of what I do. Bit of a snapshot there. I started at Southbank University doing engineering and product design. My career then led me to a company near Cambridge in the UK called the Technology Partnership, where again, kind of probably fueled my passion for innovation and design. And then moving on from that, I moved to Sydney, Australia. It's almost 17 years ago now. So I've been at ResMed for almost 17 years, and the time has just flown by. So that's where I spent most of my career, actually working at ResMed in a few different roles, but always in that product development space. But I'm kind of thinking, that's kind of interesting, but is it really that interesting for this audience? There's other things, family and home, and that's interesting to me. That's a picture of me and my family that I'm super fortunate to have. And then in the middle there, pictures of me and my mum there, and my dad. That's me, the cute one. And then a picture on the right hand side. That's Winchester. That's where I grew up, and I've got this kind of strange draw to Winchester. I know my boss describes himself as a nomad. And I'm whatever the opposite of a nomad is, that's me. I kind of have this draw to Winchester and where I grew up, and it does come back to connections. Unsurprisingly, a lot of strong connections back to that place. So I put home in inverted commas because it kind of takes on a bit of a funny meaning sometimes when I think about home, where I'm living now, and what that means to me. Other things I was thinking about, kind of me time, right? And like when I was a kid, I never dressed up as my superhero, so I was a bit of a late developer in that regard. Because now what I do in me time is to dress up as my favorite superhero, and I go out and play tennis. As you can see there, I can't afford Roger's new sponsor, so I'm stuck with Nike. But as I was working through this, I was kind of thinking, well, like, what's interesting? Are any of these things interesting? How can I wrap this up into a message, or kind of thoughts or ideas or things to provoke that would be interesting to you guys? And kind of where I landed was this notion of dark matter. Dark matter makes up 85% of our universe. It intertwines everything, but we've not actually identified. We know it's there because it impacts other things, but we've never actually been able to identify it. We've never found dark matter. We just know it's there, and it's what makes everything in the universe make sense. It's what connects everything to everything else. And the reason we know it's there is because of its impact on other things. We can measure its impact on other things, but we haven't actually found it yet. And this is where I was landing, was all of these areas of my life are actually intertwined by this dark matter. All the things, all the moments that make it make sense, all the experiences, all of the kind of nuggets of information, the things that piece it together. And that's kind of what I'm going to try really hard and do today. Because like I said, it's a little bit different to what I usually present on, which is around innovation. Innovation will come up. Innovation will be, it's core to what I do and what I am. So it will naturally come up. But what I'm going to try and do is kind of weave my way in between a few different areas. So at the end, let me know if it works. Okay, I'm going to start with this picture, not just because it's a picture of one of the greatest films of all time, of course, Love Actually. but it's to do with the camcorder that that man is holding. And this was a moment, I was in the UK. I'd been working, I'd only just started my role in this world of engineering design. And like, I was super nervous. I was convinced I was not the smartest guy in the room ever, like not even close. So I was terrified of being found out. And the reason I've got the picture of the camcorder there is, and this, I will be dating myself throughout this presentation with various examples, and this is probably a classic example. I had a camcorder. I had one of these handheld camcorders, and what happens is there's a little cassette that lives just to the side of the screen, and you can pop the cassette open and pull your tape out, and that's what you record everything on. And I popped the cassette out, and as I popped the cassette out, you can peer into the mechanism inside the camcorder. And inside that camcorder is this elaborate array of gears and mechanisms and things meshing, and they are micro manufactured and they are meshing perfectly. And I had this feeling that I'd never had since, I'll be honest, where I held two very opposing points of view at exactly the same time. One point of view was, oh my God, I couldn't possibly do that. I couldn't possibly make anything like this, as I gazed into this camcorder, terrified that I was into this field of work where I was now expected to do this sort of thing. And I was gazing into this camcorder, the complex mechanism, thinking, I can't possibly do that. And at exactly the same time, the thought in my head was also, humans made that, therefore you can too. And it was this odd contradiction that had me terrified about being able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And at exactly the same moment, having this sense of, humans made that, therefore you can make that. There's nothing to stop you doing that, which propelled me. It stayed with me forever. And even now I reflect on everything that is going on in the world, even things like AI. AI has been created by humans. So I guess my message here is around, whatever you want to achieve, know that for the most part, humans have created that. And there's nothing to stop you connecting with other people and being a cog in that machine that creates that thing that you want to achieve. And that imposter syndrome is something that Adam Grant talks about. He turned imposter syndrome around for me, where he spoke about imposter syndrome, which is essentially what I was feeling here, this imposter syndrome of not being good enough. And he talks about imposter syndrome being a good thing, and how high achievers regularly feel imposter syndrome. And the reason it's such a good thing is because it makes you check yourself. It makes you stop and go, do I really understand that well enough? Am I really kind of understanding the problem? Am I really kind of getting to the crux of the issue? And in doing so, you can then go back and learn more and build more knowledge and build more wisdom. And so that imposter syndrome is actually a very, very healthy thing. So for those of you out there, it probably happens to all of us, right? Where we have that feeling of, oh my God, am I good enough? Take it as a good thing, because it means that you're then going to go and check yourself and try and work out, well, what are the bits where maybe I'm not quite good enough, or maybe I need to improve, maybe I need to get some more skills, or maybe I need to partner with somebody who has those skills so that together we can achieve something greater. Cool change. I mentioned I was going to be dating myself throughout this presentation. Here's another great example. Some of you will know what this is. It's a McLaren F1. The reason that people like myself at my university, in my year at university, would do engineering and design is on this slide here. It's because we wanted to make cool things. We wanted to make really cool things. And the course that I went to, the lecturers were also always super proud of the fact that people from that course would work at McLaren. And they would also work at Formula One cars. And this was so cool. The coolest thing you could do was go and make a McLaren, be involved in the design of a McLaren F1 car. So this is like, kind of mid 1990s, when this thing was just streaks ahead. What I noticed though over my career is that cool changes. So when I joined ResMed 17 years ago, I didn't join ResMed because it was a medical company or because I wanted to make products that would help people. I wanted to move to Australia. That was the decision that we had made, my wife and I. My wife's Australian, hence that change, right? But that's the decision. We were going to move to Australia. And this job came up at ResMed. I didn't kind of know who ResMed were, and I kind of looked up where they were on the map, and I kind of did a bit of research, and I went through the interview process, and I started working at ResMed. All along, still thinking that making cool things was about making things like a McLaren F1 or a Formula One car. Today, 17 years later, cool has changed for me. Cool is actually making things that help people. And I don't think I could ever work in a company or work on products that don't have that connection to helping other people. And of course, there is the commercial reality of, yeah, of course, we've got to meet our numbers and it's a commercial organization. But ultimately, I now get to take what I do and apply it to products and solutions that help people, helps them sleep at night. And because they get to sleep at night, they have a better quality of life, which means that they can spend more time with their loved ones, which means they can create more memories and better memories with the people that they love. And so now, in terms of what's cool for me, it's no longer about, you know, designing McLaren F1. Cool for me is actually about working with people to design solutions that help other people. And because we help other people, we help them create more memories, more connections. Okay, so as not to disappoint, why have I got Top Gun Maverick on here? So I actually messaged Mick, and I made this reference to Top Gun. He pinged me and he kind of asked me how I was going, and I'm a pretty open person, and I messaged him going, I'm struggling a little bit. I'm kind of some thoughts going around, and kind of not sure where I'm at. I'm struggling a little bit, and the reason I quoted Maverick is I love what I do so much, and it's been part of my life since I was 13. I decided which university and which course at the university to do when I was 13, and I'm super fortunate to have had that clarity, and even more fortunate to still love what I do after all those years. My brother was quite different. My brother, I'd argue, still doesn't quite know what he wants to do. So I feel super fortunate. Not only did I land on what I was passionate about very early in life, I still love it. I can see no end to the passion I have for working with people to design products. But it also defines me in some way. It also is part of my identity. And this is for all of you wondering why Maverick was right, it's this quote that he makes during the film, which I may have watched 3 times. It's about, I'm a fighter pilot. It's not what I am, it's who I am. And this really resonated with me. And I know that comes with risk. I know that comes with risk because my identity and what I do, they're intertwined. I can't separate those two things. Like I can't not be connected to and identify with what I do for a living, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I can only speak for myself in that regard. But it comes with risk, but it's a risk I take all day long, every day. And I feel very privileged actually, and very fortunate to have that intertwined link between who I am and what I do, and I can't separate those two things. And that's why for me, Maverick was right. It comes with risk, but it's a risk I'll take all day.
Yeah, and Jamie, I absolutely love that. When we were naming our business, we named it To Be Limitless, not To Do Limitless. It was always for me about being, that not what I do. This is who I am, I don't do coaching. It's at the heart of the being piece. So the to be part and connecting with your being, there's a couple of really interesting insights you've already made. I love the idea of that cool change as well. And the reality, before every great thing that's ever happened in your life, change was part of it. So that being part and that change part, I think it's really, and I think Deepak Chopra said, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And how do you get into that state of being who you are rather than doing who you are? I think it's a really good insight, mate.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thanks, Mick. Good segue. So in terms of what I do, I pinched this from a friend of mine who runs a company in the UK. This kind of defines what I do in my world at ResMed, which is, we just need to get from A to B. We just need to get from where we are now to deliver this product. It's got to look like this, and this is what it is, right? And that's me holding the door open going, yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that. And it's this world of ambiguity. It's this world of uncertainty of how we get from A to B. So this kind of captures what I love doing. I love doing it because it's hard. But from a design point of view and from an engineering point of view, from an innovation point of view, it's all about how do we navigate this ambiguity and how do I help other people navigate this ambiguity, and how do we have a whole lot of fun whilst we're doing it? To get a little bit more granular, a bit more specific beyond the funny looking picture, what we have to do at ResMed, and probably any other company doing research and development, is you've got to do that incremental 10%, right? That's what they say keeps the lights on. So in my role, I've got to make sure that we are investing in technologies that improve what we're doing year on year. And I've got to balance that with this transformative, the 10x. What are the big bets that we're making into the future? What are those things that are kind of, the business uncertainty is very high and the technology uncertainty is very high. And this notion that we're investing in technologies that make sense in the future, and that may mean that they don't make sense today. And this becomes challenging because this 10% incremental is understood, it's comfortable, it's measurable. I can get some data around that. It's a space where I can measure and predict and move forward. The 10x is all of those things in reverse. It's unpredictable. It's actually unmeasurable for the most part. It's really ambiguous. And I've said that, ask me about data. The reason I've said that is because the way we treat data in these two areas is fundamentally different. And I worry at the moment that we are slowing down because of data, which might sound a bit odd, but because data is at our fingertips, because data is so easily accessible, we use this as a mechanism to say, well, I'm not going to move forward until I've got more data. And the reason that that is challenging when we think about the transformative 10x is that data has one thing in common, and that's that all of it happened in the past. Every piece of data happened in the past. So when you're thinking about making a 10x change into a space that may not have occurred before, into a product or a space or an industry that may not have existed before, where's your data, right? All data is historical. There isn't data. You've got to take that leap of faith. You've got to take that jump to really deliver on that 10x. So this is my world where I've got to kind of make sure that I'm getting the balance right between the incremental 10% improvements that we've got to keep making on our products, and that's super valuable, and at the same time energizing teams to think about that transformative 10x that we can achieve. This is a nice little example that I like to use, and a kind of another lens for why it becomes so challenging. This is Amara's law, right? We tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short term and underestimates in the long run. And this is just a classic example, which I absolutely adore. 1903, the Wright brothers fly 852 feet. Wind forward 66 years, we land a man on the moon 384,000 kilometers away, and we bring that person and their team home safely in just 66 years. So this is in one lifetime. You witnessed somebody flying for the first time ever, and in that same lifetime, you witnessed somebody traveling to the moon, landing there allegedly, and coming back again. I love this one. I think it's such a great reminder of why it becomes so challenging and so hard to be able to predict what is achievable in the short term, what is achievable in the long term. But it's why I love doing what I'm doing, because it's that challenge. I can see there's a question there on the chat. I'm happy to jump into it, but I don't want to bugger up my slide deck. Here we go. Cornelius, too much data sometimes leads to analysis paralysis. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely. Okay, this one another example. I did a course recently, which I'd kind of love to share with you. It was one of these aha moments, but one of those aha moments where when you have the aha moment, you kind of feel a bit stupid for not realizing it 20 years ago. So I did this course with MIT. It was a technology and innovation acceleration program. Went for 6 months. I went into it going, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to learn about org strategy, leadership, radical innovation, critical thinking, all these things, right? AI, ML, all these things that are going to make me do my job so much. But I'm going to take all of these things and bring those back to my day job. And these are the things that are going to matter. These things here, leadership, innovation, tech. These are the things that are going to make a difference. Also to call out, this little picture that they provided was somewhat misleading because the reality of the matter is this is a US-based course, which meant that the lectures were at 2 a.m. So you skip those. So there's no collaboration, as they've got this lovely picture here with people debating. What happens is you open your laptop at 5 o'clock in the morning, and if you go and get a cup of tea, then your cat sits on your laptop because that's the only warm thing in the room. And so this was the reality of what I had to do for 6 months, was get up at 5 o'clock every morning and kind of work my way through this course. The aha moment came at the end of this course. I'd been through all of these elements that I've listed there. Super interesting. And the aha moment was when this guy spoke about culture. And I was like, oh man, like this thing that we know it's there. It's kind of nice. We know we feel it when it's not there. But what the module kind of really kind of zeroed in on was, if you get the culture right in your organization, everything else is A, so much easier, B, so much better, and you can have so much more impact. And it was this moment where I was like, actually, you know what? The best thing I can do is to focus on the culture, building that culture of innovation, building that culture of inclusivity, culture of fun, culture of striving to do better, striving to do more. Because when you do that, all these other things happen. It is the team around you that will have the best ideas, right? It is the team around you that will drive the entire team in the right direction. And if you get the culture right, if you focus on the culture, that is what makes the biggest difference. So that is a bit real, like I said, kind of embarrassed to share it with you guys, because you're like probably going, yeah, kind of, duh, why didn't you realize that one? But it was just that moment that I'll let us share with you guys. And this quote from Adam Grant that I love, he kind of got this nice little clip that he sent out around hire for cultural contribution, not cultural fit. Talks about cultural fit being this sort of thing where you end up with diminishes creativity, because you're just all looking at things from the same lens, because you employed the person that was a bit like you. You employed the person that you like because they had the same kind of values as you, or they had the same sort of background as you. And he's saying, don't hire for cultural fit, because you're just going to hire everyone that's like you. Hire for people that contribute to your culture.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you think about that, Jamie? Because one of the things we speak a lot about are leaders worth following, work worth doing, and a culture worth contributing to. So we think about that a lot, like, are we creating leaders worth following? Are we building work worth doing, which you've really spoken about today, or work worth being done? Yeah. And then a culture worth contributing to. So that snapshot, is there any essence underneath that you'd like to share on the top of that? Because I think most of the people on this call do a lot of work with us, and we talk a lot about that, and it is a really interesting piece. I love the evolution. I've got strong beliefs loosely held. I've got really strong beliefs, but I hold them really loosely. Like when I first started out, I looked at work, right fit culture. And I really love this idea of cultural contribution being something that is something I can let go of right fit, because we do see that right fit does tend to break down inclusivity, diversity, inclusion, all of those things that right fit idea can have an impact on. So can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I'm really interested in that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, awesome. Love the question, Mick. Thank you. And I think what makes it so fascinating, right, is that it's so hard and so complex. I know you, Mick, you talk about what, was it complicated and complex? Was those the two? Yeah, and this is complex, right? The intertwining of people and how we work together. And I think culture is one of those things where I think for them, often for the most part, we work in culture in companies where the culture is fine. So therefore, you don't think too much about it. You come to work and you do your thing. It's only when it's like toxic, you go, oh my God, what's happened here? Where's that thing that I kind of took for granted? I didn't think twice about it. So to actually flip that and go, how can we be actively fostering a culture of innovation, of inclusivity? They're kind of words that roll off the tongue, but it's so hard. And I think because it's hard, that's why it's such a challenge, and that's why we want to go after it and kind of make such a big difference in that space of culture.
Yeah, and it makes me smile, because I know if my wife says to me, "It's fine, mate," it's anything but fine.
It's not.
It's
yeah. We have a saying in my house, which is "Fine's not good."
Yeah, 100%. And I think when we work in a culture, the Like no one ever asks us to come in and say, we'd like to be average. Can you help us with that? That's not what we're asked to do. So that idea of fine and understanding culture. Yeah, I'm really interested in digging a bit more around that. That'll make for an interesting coffee call next time we get together, mate.
For sure. Look forward to it. Nice one. Okay, next one I've got here is another bit of an aha moment, right? Which is, I think we fixate on what, and I think we fixate on the what because it's the sexy thing, right? What are we going to do? What are we going to make? What are we going to release? What is the product? What is that vision, right? Okay, well, we can brainstorm this thing and we're going to come up with these amazing ideas of what the thing is that we want to deliver on, right? Whether that's a product or a service, whatever it might be. And we fixate on the what because that's the thing which we can see. That's the vision, right? That's the tangible thing that we get excited about. But I went through this process of thinking, well, if I look at the people who have really kind of rocketed through the organization, that have had the biggest impact, and we've seen that as they progress through the organization, what is it that they are doing differently? And they do quite a few things differently, but this one came out to me pretty strongly when I was thinking about individuals within the organization, and kind of in that space of, don't envy what people have, just emulate what they did to have it. So what did they do to have such a big impact, have such influence? And it came back to how, taking this what and going, okay, that's a really compelling vision, but how the hell are we going to do that? And actually being able to break down the how into something that you can turn into action, I would argue is much harder than the what. That I find the what is often quite predictable. If you allow yourself the time and the kind of colleagues to work through what are we going to do, it's arguably quite predictable, I think. But turning that into reality is what's really, really hard. So my message here is, like, what are you doing to focus on the how? How are you going to deliver on the what? Because the what's exciting, the what is this ambitious future, but how are you going to do it? And I think if we can focus on that with our teams, because we never do anything in isolation, ever rarely, right? How can we focus this notion of the how with our teams to deliver on the what? So that's my message here, is focus on the how, because I've seen the how being that differentiator between the people that have massive impact and the people that have less impact.
And if I look at there's a human being on this program who has had a tremendous impact on the health and well-being of so many people, in David Leboucher. And I think that's what David does so well. He creates space where people can focus on their how. Yeah, he opens up space for people to focus on their how and their why. It was interesting. Two of the people that he's had a profound effect on are in Boston at the moment, and one of them ran a personal best for a half marathon yesterday by 30 minutes. And it wasn't what they did, it's how they got there that really inspires us around that impact. I think that it's a really fascinating, it's probably one of the most impactful quotes I've seen for a while. Don't envy what people have, emulate what they did to have it. I think there's a real power in that. David, is there anything you'd add to that, mate?
Just stolen it, lock, stock and barrel, the whole slide. I did a screenshot, I've tidied it up, but it's now mine. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Pleasure.
Fantastic, absolutely brilliant. No, I can't add to that. It's it sums up what Mick does too. He's awesome at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I'll keep moving because I don't want to overshoot my time. Okay, discipline. I'll touch on this quickly. This is, we talk about stress, right? What's stress? I often think of stress being worrying about things that are outside of your control. And the reason I pulled this one up, it was off a podcast that I heard. Mick put me onto podcast. I'll get onto that in a minute. But motivation is this variable that you're not in full control over. It's great. Motivation is incredible, right? When you feel motivated, it's that rocket fuel, right, that projects you forward. But when the motivation isn't there, you've got to be disciplined. You can't just kind of say, well, I don't feel motivated to do that, therefore I'll do something else. Because the discipline is the thing that you have full control over, and you can make it a constant. You can always be disciplined if you focus on discipline, right? David.
Jamie, this
come
is,
off mute.
I know, I just came off mute because I wanted to say stolen that one too. Absolute gold dust. Brilliant. Thank you.
Pleasure, pleasure. So my message here is motivation is great, but the discipline is what keeps you going, And back to kind of like high performing individuals, the high performing individuals are the ones who have mastered discipline. They're so disciplined and they use the motivation for rocket fuel, but they know that the motivation won't be there all the time. This one, again, kind of as I go through life, this collaboration. We often collaborate. We're having a meeting, we're meeting with people. I'm talking to that person and the team. I know exactly what they're doing. We share Teams messages and I go to their meetings and I'm across their roadmap. And I'm like, that's great. Are you coordinated in what you're doing? Have you coordinated what you're doing between these two teams? And the example that sticks into my head is here at ResMed. We have a team that develop masks. We have another team, big team, probably 100 plus people developing masks. I think 150, 200 people total, probably globally. Another larger team actually developing our devices. And they're coming closer and closer together in terms of being developed as a system, right? These products that become systems. The one that stands out to me was a number of years back, we set off on this mission to develop a travel positive airway device to treat people's sleep apnea. And this moment came when the project manager realized that the devices team's prioritization had the flow generator, the device that sits on your bedside table, as number one priority. And the mask team had the masks that would go with that product as a number 5 priority. And it was this classic example of they'd been collaborating. They knew what they would do. They knew across the kind of things that were happening. The teams were collaborating, but they had not coordinated. So whenever people say we're collaborating, I always say, that's great. Are you actually coordinated though? Are you synced with that other team? Because we know that typically the way things go is that products become systems. As you have more systems, you have more people, more teams, and you've got to coordinate across those teams. So my message here is, and my shout out here is actually kind of around coordination. Are we making sure that we are coordinated across our teams and across our people, as well as collaborating? The shout out here, Diary of a Sea. Mick put me onto this one when Mick was in the Blue Mountains with us running the course. He was talking about podcasting. He goes, "Oh, the Diary of a Sea, it's so good." And we all nod like we know what he's talking about, quietly writing down Diary of a CEO. And since then, this is what I've listened to on my way to and from work. Pretty much every time I drive to and from work, I'm listening to one of these podcasts. So Mick, thank you for that one. On one of those podcasts was Professor Steve Peters. And the reason I put this one up here is because to be vulnerable, I kind of have struggled in the past with when I put emotion regulation. That's the politically correct way of saying, when people piss you off. So this situation where, we're in work environments where people will trigger us. We'll be triggered. They'll say something or they will do something and we'll be triggered and then we'll react, right? And I react in 2 ways. One way is I'll say something I shouldn't have said. The other way is that I say nothing at all, and it just becomes this uncomfortable kind of meeting environment. So don't get me wrong, that doesn't happen all the time. But I went through this process in my own head about thinking, well, if I can stop the trigger, then I'll solve my problem. So if I just don't get triggered, then I won't have that emotion and I won't kind of have this inner turmoil about, I really want to say this thing, but I know that's not the right thing to do. So I'll just stay quiet. And then because I stay quiet, it kind of, people pick up on that and it spoils the kind of the vibe in the room. This book by Steve Peters has fundamentally changed the way in which my brain works, which is kind of odd. I wasn't expecting it, I'll be honest. And a couple of tidbits, and this is kind of akin to reading the back of the book because it's such a fascinating book, which I recommend to anyone. But a couple of things that he shared was around this emotional trigger being natural and healthy. So what he said is, you can't stop the emotional trigger. And the reason you can't stop it is because that's the way that your brain has been designed. Your emotional system is connected to your logical system. They're intertwined in your brain. You cannot stop your the emotional trigger from happening because it's natural, because it's there to protect you, and it's healthy because that's how the way brain works, to protect you from danger. He said, but it's often unhelpful, right? In the corporate world, in a business world, it's unhelpful. What he goes on to talk about is your beliefs and values actually dictate your emotional response. So it's the issue is not that you had the emotional trigger, but it's why did you have that trigger? And it's because you believe something maybe about the other person. I think that person said that because they don't like me, because they don't think I'm very good at my job, because they're out to get me. And that is the reason why you have this trigger and the emotional response to the trigger. So what the book talks about is actually challenging your beliefs and your values. And where you find these beliefs and values to be unhelpful, you can replace them with better beliefs and better values. Maybe that person isn't there to undermine me. Maybe that person is just asking the question in their own way to find out more information. So I found this super valuable. I'm not going to dwell on it because, like I said, it's like a 600-page book, but such an impactful book in my life that I finished reading recently. Sadly, he only wrote it like in the last year or two. I wish he'd written it 20 years ago. It would have been really helpful. I'd have had to do much less apologizing throughout the years. Such a good book, though, one to recommend. And that podcast, Diary of a CEO, so much good material in there. I get a lot of my material from that podcast. I'll step up the pace a little bit. Robustness. Steve Peters talks about robustness, about having a plan. And he talks about the plan being, how do you move from an emotional state into a logical state? But what I wanted to touch on was more about this word resilience, which has been so prevalent, especially over the pandemic. We talk about resilience, and it's got this suggestion in the word that it's this militaristic, just keep pushing through, pick yourself up and keep going. That's what we mean by resilience, just keep going. But a much better definition, which I adore, is this: resilience is actually your ability to recover. And this is a skill. You have to be able to recover. Resilience is not about pushing through and picking yourself up and just going the extra mile and slogging through. Resilience is actually about, how do you look after yourself? How do you recover? And how do you come back to work to give your all? So we need to think about resilience quite differently. It's not this notion of pushing through. It's about how you recover. And my question to you guys is, like, how are you investing in yourselves to recover so that you can come back and give everything, in that right state, that you can just deliver amazing work because you've invested in yourself and you've taken the time to recover in ways that work for you. And balance doesn't, there's no work-life balance, 50-50, it's not, right? Cut yourself some slack. Sometimes work takes over, but at other times, you know what? You've got the freedom for life to take over. Cut yourself some slack. Don't think of work-life balance as being this kind of perfect 50-50 thing. And it's not realistic, right? And I love this one, right? 80% of the time we spend with our kids is over by the time they turn 18. I found this out when my son was 18. I was like, damn it, I'm into the 20%. And the reason I've got a picture of two people boxing is because that's my son there in the red. When they're 19, you try and give them advice. I've tried to tell them that, being punched in the head is not much good can come from that, but this is what he loves doing. And went to his first ever boxing match a couple of Fridays ago. Absolutely terrifying, but he's doing what he loves doing. And now, when he says, hey, Dad, do you want to go for a walk? If I don't want to go for a walk, I'll say, of course I do. And we'll go for a walk. And so just to say to you guys, right, whatever stage of life you're at, I think this is such a compelling statistic. The fact that by the time they're 18, you've spent 80% of the time you'll ever spend with them. Obviously, this goes in both directions, right? For our parents as well. And as Jimmy Carr says, enjoy the passage of time. Whatever you might think of him as a comedian, he gave a really insightful podcast. Very smart guy. And I love this quote that he said about enjoying the passage of time. Predictably brings me on to the happiest day of my life. 29th of January, 10:51 p.m. Things kind of kicked off early in the evening. Pretty nerve-wracking. Sure you guys have been through this before. And then at 10:51, Roger won his comeback match, 18th Grand Slam title after going 3-1 down in the final set against Nadal. And this was the happiest day of my life. obviously being slightly facetious, but I'm a bit of a tennis nut. I still, if anyone can explain to me why I feel so strongly about watching Federer play tennis, I would love to know, because I stay up till 5 a.m. when it's Wimbledon, and we'll stay up all night long. But this was this is kind of my release is watching Roger Federer play. This was the start of a glory comeback, right? 2017, he won Wimbledon. Everyone had written him off before the Australian Open. He was seeded 17. He'd come back from injury. And then 2018 took out the Australian Open, despite being dressed like a licorice all sort. He was able to keep the title in 2018. And then things started to go a little bit south. This probably the worst day of my life. This was horrendous. I don't know if you, for those tennis fans out there, this was Wimbledon 2019. Everyone knew that time wasn't on Federer's side. He was coming up to 40. This match, I think, was over 5 hours long. I watched the whole thing. He had 2 match points in the 5th set, didn't get the match points, went on to lose it in the tiebreaker against Djokovic. And I think I was more upset than he was. I watched the post-match interview and I'm thinking, how can you come back from this? And then moving on from that, like this is the last handshake that he ever had at Wimbledon, where he lost to Hurkacz. I think it was in the quarters of the semi-finals. Lost 6-love, the first time he's ever lost a set 6-love at Wimbledon. Again, this is 2 years of devastation for me. I've gone from the highs of comeback to thinking Roger will never retire, and he's made this comment. I've got perspective about it, so it's all good. And never a truer word said. He's, for somebody, I'm feeling worse than he is, and the reason is because he's probably got more perspective about the situation than I have. And he went on to make this comment as the press were grilling him about how he feels about his records probably going to be broken by Djokovic or Nadal. And this just fantastic comment. I've had my moments, the moments where I broke those records, and nobody can take those moments away from me. And we need to make sure we feel like that in whatever we're doing, whatever we're achieving. When we achieve that moment, nobody can take that moment away from you. Somebody might come and do it better, but let's call that influence. Let's call that we've influenced someone to do better. We've encouraged, we've set the bar at a certain level. We've achieved something. And then someone's come in and done that better than us. Let's call that influence. Let's not be upset about that. And as Roger said, and if others experience the same moments, I'm happy for them. Let's be happy for those people that took what we did and went one better. I just love this quote. I just think it sums up Roger. As you can probably tell, kind of a bit of a fanboy. Hey, Mick.
Did you have you listened to Ben Crow talk about Roger Federer?
I haven't. No.
He talks about Roger has 3 parts to his model, and then you hear Roger talk about it. He talks about humor, gratitude, and it talks about humor, humility, and gratitude. And of course, the opposite of that is sarcasm and the arrogance and entitlement piece. So, but he talked about being at Roland Garros, and he started laughing. He said, "I've just lost to Rafa again." He started laughing, but he said, "Rafa played." He said, "I played fantastically today, but Rafa was just out of out of this world." So he started with humor, the ability to laugh, but then he started with genuine humility, not self-deprecating, but
absolutely
talking about how fantastic the other person was. He was saying, "I actually played out of this world today, but the other guy was better." And he said, "But I'm sitting around and I'm the second best tennis player in the world. I'm sitting at Roland Garros. Unfortunately, I've just played the best tennis player in the world." And he starts laughing again. And so, that perspective piece, but also understanding what your model is. Because if you don't have a model, you just have to rely on the moment. But if you can lead to humor, humility, and gratitude as a way to frame how you build that perspective, because I think for all of us, knowing what your model is, so that when you're under pressure, and we'll all be under pressure at some stage, then you can lean into the model. So the reason he can have perspective is he understands his model so well. And it's based on three really terrific things. Can I laugh?
Brilliant.
Can I bring humility, which isn't self-deprecating? It's about positive regard for others. And can I just be grateful for, nobody can take those moments away from me. And I think the most powerful part is that. And if others experience the same moments, gee, I'm happy for them. And that's humility. There's a humility in that. I really love.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Mick. I'll just wrap up just a couple more. Like the next one is around, what we started with, which was the better than number one. And this was about the notion of not self-limiting. And this was a bigger presentation I shared with my teams here, was around, the lines at the top, ResMed and one other competitor kind of pretty much got most of the market share. And we often kind of go, okay, well, where are we? Are we better than the next best, right? Are we got more market share? And I just find this quite self-limiting, where if we just focus on being better than number one, are we actually striving for the absolute optimal, what the best can be? Which is why I kind of share with my guys to go, you got to strive to be better than number one. It's not just about beating the next competitor. It's actually about striving for your vision, striving for that vision of, we've got some pretty bold aspirations when it comes to treating people's sleep conditions. And we know how big that challenge is, but we also know how much impact we can have. And the sorts of numbers that we're talking about in terms of, like I said at the beginning, 1 in 8 people have obstructive sleep apnea, but the numbers that actually treat that problem are minute by comparison. So the opportunity to impact people's lives is huge. And if we just fixate on being better than our competitor, it's going to take us a hell of a long time to hit those aspirations. But if we just shoot for the stars and go for what we want to achieve, then we will achieve that, better than number one, and we won't self-limit. And this other one, I put the industry best practice. This is, Jamie, go and find industry best practice for innovation. I'm like, that's great, but we can do better than that. If we just hit the ceiling of, okay, well, I found the industry best practice, so we just do that, then that's great. We can do better. You can always do better than the number one. You can do better than these kind of self-limiting kind of levels that we provide ourselves. So I know that ties in, I think, quite nicely with your company name, Mick, about, to be limitless. But yeah, don't self-limit. I think it's around all the time. I think we do it almost by accident. But have your eyes open for those times when the metric is self-limiting, and then think about what that limitless aspiration should be, in fact. I'm going to finish with this one. Gus Balbontini presented at ResMed, crazy South American guy, gives an incredible presentation. I love this quote from him. Don't let anyone's realistic expectations destroy your unrealistic dreams. Somebody needs to be unrealistic at some point in time to create new realities. And the reason I love it is because it's just so steeped in what I love doing and the vision I have around creating these new realities. And therefore putting yourself out there and being vulnerable with these unrealistic dreams about what we can achieve. And it's only when you put those unrealistic dreams out there that you can actually turn those into these new realities. I'm going to stop there. I've got Q&A, and I always say, this is my caveat for not being able to answer questions, is that the best questions are the ones you can't answer, because it causes you to go and seek new information and new wisdom and new knowledge.
Yeah, so fantastic, Jamie. Thank you for a couple of things. Thank you for time, effort, and energy you put into preparation. We talk about it, we're much more interested in impact than information. I think the world tends to go a bit information crazy and doesn't focus on impact. So I can see how deeply organized you were to create impact there. And so I'll be interested if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask you, or any insights. And I know that we can always connect you with others. And as you say, the best questions are always the ones you can't answer. I love that piece. I think the unrealistically optimistic are the people that always change the world. So that if you're unrealistically optimistic, that means that you will go and back it up with action. You've got to get in the wheelbarrow, obviously, but those things are
Yeah.
important. Does anyone have?
And
any...
I'm happy to send you guys the slides if you want to distribute those. There's nothing confidential in there, obviously. So happy to share those.
Yeah, thank you, mate. I'd love. I know that Olivia, who's on this call, does such a fantastic job around the relationships that we have in this organisation. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, are there any questions in the group, or any comments you'd like to make, or something that resonated with you? I think one of the things that I'm thinking about, Cornelis, is the idea of, I know that collaboration is one of our values. I wonder how coordination plays its way into that too, mate. It's something I want to reflect on around one of the values we have at TP Bennett, which is a piece of work I'm in London to do over the next couple of weeks. So I'm really interested in, I want to go away and reflect a bit on that. Any other comments, questions, insights, ideas, sharing that anyone else has today? I took down a couple of notes. There was something that which was interesting to me. Tamara has a question. Oh, it's a great insight. She loved your insight.
Thanks, Tam. Thanks, Tam.
Yeah,
Tam works at ResMed. Thank you.
yeah, it was lovely to see so many. I think that idea of the mix between data, risk, and change is something that I'm really interested in as well. You know, some people say, in God we trust, everyone else needs to bring data, but the insight that is always historical, and how do you use it to drive risk and take those great risks, I think is a really important one. JCS, I see you've just turned on there, mate. Any insights or anything that you took away from the listen with Jamie there? I'm always interested, because you always run sideways at things where I tend to run forward into them.
Yeah, well, I love the coordination piece. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? And we've got to look at our lives through that lens. Are we actually truly coordinating? So I want to take that way and think about it. But I was also thinking about the unrealistic expectations, because I think people who are that way inclined need to be given a bit of bandwidth to be unrealistic. And sometimes corporate structures can inhibit that and see those people as being a little bit odd. And I might include myself in that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, if you weren't going to include yourself, I was about to include you anyway, mate. So I'm glad that you've put your hand up for that. Because if you didn't include yourself in that, I would have definitely said, no, that is you. But you know, that always reminds me of, here's to the crazy ones, isn't it? Yeah, where would we be without those crazy ones? You know. Yeah.
I was going to say, Julian, in my role, I always say to them, so we're working the front end, sort of the out there stuff. I always say to my guys, if the only thing that you do is what people are asking you to do, then you're not doing your job properly. You've got to do those things that people are not. If you just do what everyone's asking you for, you'll just get incremental innovation. So yeah, you've got to work on things that they haven't asked for.
And as architects, we often say to clients, you know, we're not order takers. We're not here with a blank sheet of paper to write down what you want. We're actually meant to be bringing something here. That's possibly true of other roles too.
Yeah,
and that just opening up, and I'm really interested in, and this is my question that'll throw out something that maybe some people will come back with, maybe you can share in the chat, but everyone likes to share in different ways. Maybe you can reach out to Jamie, because in the show notes that Liv will send out, and of course the recording as well, what are you going to do differently because of what you've heard today? Because these sessions, we're coaches at the end of the day. So the idea of it, people will often say at the end of a session, that was a great session. And I'll say, how do you know? You haven't done anything yet. You know, like I'm interested when you come back to the next session and tell me that was a great session, because you've gone to do something. But is there anything that you'll do differently out of today? I think I'm going to be really focused on this right fit idea, and cultural contribution idea is something I'm going to really lean into. Jamie, I'm really going to think harder about what that looks
awesome.
like. I've got a couple of really great opportunities to do that. So,
Yeah, brilliant.
and anything else? I know we're right on the edge of time, and people's time is really important. I'm really interested in what people are going to do differently and better because of today. I know I'm going to think of that cultural contribution. I'm also going to be thinking really strongly around coordination around some of the organizations we work with who have collaboration as a key value. And that's an important piece. A reminder to spend more time with my kids, be more disciplined in the way I use my time. Yeah, I think if that's tomorrow's big takeaway, that's a massive takeaway. All right. I'm going to ask you just to do one more favor for us. If you've got your screen turned off at the moment, your camera off at the moment, we'd love you just to turn it on. We'd love just to grab a photo with everybody here, because we want to just really acknowledge the amount of time, effort, energy that Jamie put into preparation for today. Human beings connect best with faces. That's why we do it. Gianni, my brother, you've joined us from Milan. Lake Iseo.
Thank you. Ciao. Ciao, everybody.
Ciao. It's great to see you, mate. It's so good to see you. So I'm going to ask Olivia, put your best smile on, because Olivia's going to grab a photo here. Thank you, Jamie. Sincere thanks for today.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. And guys, thanks for all the very kind comments. Really appreciate it. Lovely to connect with you all. And yeah, Mick, thanks for the opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas. Hopefully it was useful. But yeah, really appreciate it, Mick. Thank you. And thanks everyone.
It was a sincere pleasure and privilege. Our To Be Limitless Friday sessions happen at the last Friday of every month. Olivia will be reaching out. She'll be sharing this recording. Once we've stopped, we'll top and tail it, and we'll be putting it onto our YouTube channel and share a link. And I know a lot of people who couldn't be here today because of time zones and different things really want to see it. Thank you for your time. Have a fantastic weekend. I'm in London at the moment. The weather is absolutely cracking. Can't wait to get out and crash into it. So have a great weekend, and we'll look for, and thank you for joining. And Jamie, once again, thank you. Outstanding.
Pleasure.
Outstanding, mate.
Always.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Mick. Thanks
Cheers.
everyone. See you guys.
You. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
See
Thanks,
you.
all.